You've landed at Spark Launch, the guide star for embracing what it means to be neurodiverse. Here, we navigate mental health triumphs and tribulations from all across the spectrum, charting a course through the shared experiences that unite us, and discovering how to embody the unique strengths within neurodivergent and neurotypical alike, igniting your spark and launching it into a better tomorrow. Today, we're joined by Candace Gillhoolley, an engagement leader and author with over 15 years of experience at the intersection of technology, marketing, and education. She's the co-author of the book Foundations of Sentient Marketing. Beyond her work in marketing and quantum computing, Candace is a passionate advocate for neurodiversity, championing the idea that technology should adapt to people, not the other way around, and is dedicated to opening up space for neurodivergent brilliance to shine. Candace, welcome to Spark Launch.
Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited.
Welcome, Candace. I've known you for quite some time now. You've even written a blog for us. So share where you are on your journey. I think we're all on a journey. And where are you right now?
In terms of technology, or I should say like professional wise, I'm currently the co-host of Impact Quantum podcast, which is actually currently rated as the #1 quantum podcast out there, which really gets me excited because it started because I was really curious about quantum computing. And right now in this AI soaked up world, it was just too much. I wanted to see where we were going. And so a friend of mine who is an AI engineer and enthusiast, he was telling me, we're talking about quantum. And I said, oh my God, I know quantum because my father, who was an IBM inventor for 30 years, worked on quantum and algorithms in like the 70s and the 80s. Like he was so far ahead of everybody. Like that's what everybody was always saying. And now that I see where we are with quantum, like I get it. I finally get what these other men he was working with at IBM, just total geniuses. And they're like, he just was so far ahead of everybody. And I didn't get it. And now when I'm learning about it, it's just, I'm insatiable because it's going to affect our lives in a really good way, in my opinion. And in effect, across the board in everything you can imagine, you know what I mean? From climate predictions to precision medicine, right? When you think about how technology is advancing with, for example, diagnosis of neurodivergency, that to me is like the bomb ditty. Like I'm so excited by that because when I was diagnosed with dyslexia in like 1900 and hoodly-hoo, it's a traumatizing experience, right? Like you're sitting in a room with an adult, you don't know why, and you're not outside at recess when you should be. So the idea of helping children with the diagnosis aspect and the anxiety that's around it so that you're getting a much purer diagnosis, I think is fantastic. And I can see that happening. And it's actually just really starting in some other countries right now. It's very exciting.
So you found your special interest. That's the thing that we all have, right? We get hyper-focused on things that we are interested in, and that learning need not come from the classroom. And most likely, they're not from the classroom. They're from external environments, the environments that we interact, those conversations we have, those relationships we have. So our interests come from the environment. So it's amazing where you are in your journey. You've been called for that. And we don't have to know the full picture, right? You're just chasing it. And I can see the excitement and your passion.
Yeah, I really like it. And we live in a society right now where it's just, there's so many more things that are available to you, right? So you have all these online resources. And so you're right. It doesn't have to be strictly in a school setting, which frankly is just not the right place for certain children to be. I come from academia. Like I said, my father was a doctor and he was an inventor. I've been to college and lots of my family members my brother's a doctor, like my husband has a history doctorate. So I come from academia, right? And I respect it because I know it. And I know that's how you make it in life. because my father came to America in 1940, escaping Germany and the fascism that was going on there. And he came here, they came as a family with nothing, right? And they built themselves from nothing. I love education. I'm like a huge fan. But I also parent children with neurodiversity, and I see it in a different way because one of my children, it's just not the path. And you, at one point, you have to finally be like, enough. And we all struggled with it for a very long time, right? If you would have spoken to me 4 years ago, I was in a dark, dark hole. I knew there was going to be light at the end of the tunnel, right? But I was nowhere near the end of the tunnel. And it's hard to find a community that's there to help you. I have a very good friend, and she is a child who's autistic, and she's a teacher. And I'm like, she faces tremendous barriers to life as a parent and then watching it with her children. But there's a lot of people that will stand behind it and be like, oh, okay, we're trying to figure out how to make it easier and more appropriate for children, or people who are autistic, which I understand is a great thing. But, nobody cared if your kid had ADHD. Nobody cared. There was no community. And it was like this fight that you at the time had to do alone. And I don't like thinking that I'm alone on something like that. I just don't. So one thing I did, which was a little nutty cuckoo, is I went on to YouTube. It's called Include Us World. And I started talking parent to parent on what it is like to parent neurodiversity and when I do really well and when I screw up. Right? And I do really well and I really screw up on the daily. So it's not like I've learned everything that there is to learn, because I too am human, and I too, have neurodiversity through, my dyslexia, right? I was diagnosed at 10 years old. So like I've had it for a long time and I've managed it for a long time, but it's different when it's a different neurodiversity for my children, and it's different when it's for your children.
I've been in the same place, that dark place before, so I completely get it, especially during the pandemic. It was the perfect storm. And now getting out of it and seeing everyone in my family thrive, I see what I was doing. And one thing I can tell is that I was forcing my son to fit into that system because I had made myself fit into the system. Now looking back, I was going at a slow pace. Every time I was working with the system, it was slow. And then I realized, gosh, what I'm doing for myself, I'm doing that to my son. So first I had to work on myself to see why I was doing what I was doing. And the number one thing that came out of it, my own research on myself, was fear. I was parenting out of fear versus love. And that fear, where did that fear come from? The fear of, what if he actually did what he wanted to do? And all of these questions made me work on my fears. And I learned to let go of fears and embrace love. And that was the turning point. The second I embraced love for myself, and then I did that to my son and my family. And now there's so much love in our family, that love and respect, that how could I not do it for the rest of the families, right? Because I had found that secret to just, so it's not easy. Nobody teaches you these things. And we're all on a growth journey. I mean, there's no way am I perfect. I don't even think perfection exists. But if we just get on the right path and be aware that there's so much more outside of the system, but the real world honors the system, except if it is entrepreneurship, which is the blog that you wrote about how you can tap into the neurodivergent strengths. Feel that's one way you can get out and express, because the universe honors if you're putting out good stuff It will.
Absolutely. So initially, I had started, honestly, it took me 10 years to write my first book. And I'm not saying that like it should take anybody that long, but it did take me 10 years to write my first book, which was about my father's escape from Germany. And it was a really amazing milestone. It gave me closure on the most tremendous project that I had created outside of having children. And then seeing it to a point where there it was in front of me. I was just so very proud. But what it made me realize was that part of my strength is in my writing, right? So I've been nurturing my writing for over a decade to see it get better and better. And so then I did the Sentient Marketing book. And then we also just came out with another book called The Quantum Curious, which is basically from the podcast, because I was thinking about, after we did the podcast, another neurodivergent strength of my own, communicating with people, talking with people, making people comfortable, because I'm me. Take it or leave it, love it or hate it. I always say, I said, if you don't like me, then, there's probably something wrong with you, because I'm really likable. But that's what it is. This is it. There is no mask. I can't do that. I don't know what that's about, but I'm really good at what I do. And I'm really good at getting people inspired about something and bringing them to another level where they can do something else tremendous and fantastic. Again, neurodivergent strength. So finding what makes me super special and then doubling down on it. Doing the podcast this year, I think we're at episode 30 since we started in the end of February. And it's been really fantastic. And I have another like 10 recorded and another 20 interviews. I love it. And then from that, I said, we have such amazing content. Let me write about it. And so then I started writing about, what did I learn? Like, what can we all learn? Like, what's the journey? How does mentorship help? And putting that all together in a big package with a bow. And again, doubling down on what I'm good at, right? And then bringing that into the world. So that's where I am now.
Yeah, it reminds me of the idea, kind of discovering what you're good at, what you're adept at, what your brain clicks into, and going off a little bit of what Chaya was saying as well about kind of interfacing with yourself and actually choosing to understand yourself. It's a bit like we're code you have to figure out. What language is our own personal code in? And we're able to decipher that. Then we're able to put the pieces together of like, okay, where does my code go? What specific ideals and concepts are my code particularly good at and adept at? And then being able to then apply it. But a lot of talking about the systems that we're at, I believe he was like made them as being like neuro-basic in a lot of ways. These are not systems that are really adept, and professional systems, educational systems, just life in general, day to day. You could see practically just running errands as a form of system, honestly. That is not particularly helpful for some neurodivergent people, but they're grandfathered in systems that are usually broken. And then we get areas of expertise that lurch forward very slowly because there's no sense of creativity in them. There's no sense of outside the box thinking. They're just patterned after the most basal brain pattern possible that no one's able to really like escape from. So when you think about you wanting to change the conversation around these systems, and not just for neurodivergent people, but how the pattern of the neurodivergent brain and the neurodiverse culture is able to bring to a changing landscape. What sort of creative ideal is centered on that?
And that you have to be willing to step away from the structure of what society says you have to do. I have one child who is an academic, and he is in university and succeeding and found a way in to the system through maturity in his ability. He was able to do that. I couldn't do that for him. I could only set up a paradigm of safety for him to express himself in the best way possible. And he could find a way forward. Now, my other child is completely different. Academic is not going to be their future. However, what are they really good at? What legitimately keeps them feeling steady and good to be part of society. And, they started working at 17 because what was available to them, unfortunately, different choices here in Canada just wasn't good enough. If I was in the States, back where I grew up in New York, I could have absolutely found a school that would have dialed into understanding the ADHD and how long a person can like maintain concentration to be able to do something effective and work around that, right? And not be like, well, if the kid's not on medication and you can't do anything about giving them the concentration, they just have to work harder. That's bullshit. Sorry. I can't stand that. That just makes me crazy. You don't have to work harder. You have to do better. Right? You have to think beyond what is easy and put out there, because the truth is there's more children that have neurodiversity than there are children who are neuro-basic. And it's just a fact. And considering that our world is changing so quickly, the children who have neurodiversity, they see things on just different levels, different tracks, and they can put things together in different ways that neuro-basic can't, right? So finding what your kid is good at and communicating with them in a way that keeps them inspired, that's what you have to do. And you have to look around and know that everyone is pointing at you and thinking they're crazy and what they're doing, and they can't do that. That's totally not what society says they're supposed to do. And you just have to be like, you don't pay my bills, you don't raise my children, and I have the children that I want. I need to understand how to help them be as successful as possible. That's my job as a parent. So that's how I try to set them up.
Yeah. We need to stop listening to it and keep believing in yourself, your family, your children, because that's what they need to grow, that love. And when that belief, that just blind belief that they are going to do awesome, right? The world will recognize them only after they have made it, right? But it's about the money. Let's say somebody makes millions or billions, whatever that is. And only after that, they'll start talking about the story where this child didn't go to school and somehow figure it out. But while you're doing that, you're alone. But it's just important to just believe in yourself. And if you're doing the right thing, when I say the intention is good, you'll be supported.
Absolutely. And I tell people talk to me 4 years ago. I was in a very dark place, trying to make sure I could really understand and do everything that I was capable of doing to do the best by my children as possible. I mean, that's why it was dark, right? Because I had to learn new ways of communication that were way more effective, dialectic behavioral therapy. I'm a huge, huge believer in DBT, and you can get the same things done. It's just approaching situations with a different kind of mindset and not constantly with a judgment behind it, because that doesn't get anybody anywhere. Let's be honest. But it's also about giving up some control. And that's a really hard thing for some people. It was really hard for me. I really needed a lot of control. I needed things to kind of go a certain way so I could have a certain level of non-anxiety, right? Everything can't be different. That's going to be too hard for me. But then you find the love, you believe in your children, and you say, no, you know what? This is what we're going to do because this is what makes sense. And if someone else doesn't see it, that's not my problem anymore. But the truth is, I know there's more people out there that have similar situations. They just don't know where to go. And they're a little locked inside their own world. And because it's hard, but it's hard to realize and it's hard to step back from it, right? Like I said, I'm in the light right now. And that doesn't mean that there aren't moments that go right back like that to darkness when something happens. However, because I can see both sides of it, I know now that everything that I baked in to those kids, all that love, all that protection, all that support, I baked it into them. So it's inside them. So whatever else is going on around them, the nonsense, the noise, deep down, they know they're good people. They come from good people. They deserve good things, and they can have good things because they're smart enough, right? They're kind enough. and they're curious enough and they're flexible. They're flexible as all get out. Like these kids are so flexible to deal with different situations. And that's the secret to anything, I think, really, is the adaptability and the flexibility. And they really are, because they're constantly bombarded by a paradigm that it doesn't make any sense to them. As a kid, I didn't know what out of the box thinking was, because I didn't even know a box existed. I had no idea.
It was so deep down in the box.
I had no idea.
That was a world.
I was trying to get my numbers not to invert themselves and have my sentences make sense and function and learn and study so hard to get things done. But I did it. I stayed within the paradigm, but the paradigm eventually worked for me. And now it's an issue of the whole working world is being flipped on its ear right now. And a lot of people don't understand that they're not going to be in this kind of situation that they think they're going to be in. In a couple of years, it's going to be way different. It just is. And like when I went to college, the jobs that I've done never existed. You know what I mean? Like they never existed. All digital marketing. There was nothing that wasn't going on when I was in university. You have to be adaptable and you have to figure out what you're good at and have the space to figure it out.
And what you're good at doesn't feel like work.
I love talking to people. I could talk to the wall. I enjoy that. I remember when I graduated high school, the dean that had me in her group, she turned to my mom and she said, Candy is a people person. Candy loves being around people. Candy is social. Candy likes finding out what's going on with people and like what can be done. How can we continue this idea? And that's what I turned it into. I have a newsletter. I have a website. I have a podcast. And I'm trying to get other people curious about what I'm curious about, because it's more important for example, in quantum, to have people like me who can explain it to other people to make it part of what our whole world's going to be about. Also with neurodiversity, understanding why it's important to communicate with your children in a certain way so that you can get the best out of the situation, right? And they can have the best out of their own situation without always feeling like they've done something wrong because something is hard, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to me that neurodivergent brains can wrap themselves around a subject like quantum computing and these like really complex topics and these complex tech innovations, while at the same time looking at a cash register and having no idea how to work it, or just it's just insurmountable to them. Me, like I get into a car and I might as well be in like a plane cockpit. It's very overwhelming to me, but I can get my head around really weird, complex computer topics and things like that. And I guess from your point of view and what you've took notice of, what do you think it is specifically about a neurodivergent brain, no matter where on the spectrum they are, that seems to be better to blend in with technology and these more deeper tech topics than other aspects of life?
Well, I think like let's say, for example, if a child like under the age of 4 is exposed to multiple languages, it creates different neural pathways. I didn't know how to read until I was 10 years old. That was mind blowing to anybody. I came from an inventor. My mother, she was a journalist. Look what I came from, right? And I couldn't read and I was 10 years old, right? But I knew how to tool around a situation like nobody's business. I was the queen of the resource. I figured out how to figure it out as best as I could hide it until it really became an issue. But it was that tooling and it was that resourcing that I found created pathways that I see the bigger picture. I say, okay, we could do this. And I'm not telling you how we're started yet. You know, I got to distill it down to get to how we start. But I can see how the connections can happen. I can see the people that need to talk to each other to have the innovations to make things happen. I've always been good at that, right? But I'm not alone. They talk about all the time how dyslexia has dyslexic thinking. It's this incredible big picture thinking. I think that's because when something is hard, you have to learn how to survive. I think it was about survival. I had to learn how to survive around me like everybody else, but I couldn't do what everybody else could do. I couldn't read the Leo the Lion book. The goddamn Leo the Lion book. I couldn't read it, no matter how hard I tried. I was left back in kindergarten. I did kindergarten twice. People were like, you don't get left back in kindergarten. I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Now, I started kindergarten when I was 4. Clearly, I shouldn't have been in kindergarten at 4. But in order to get into kindergarten, I read to them an entire book, Green Eggs and Ham. Wait, you say, Candace, you couldn't read? Sure. I memorized the entire book. I knew when to turn the pages. The head of the school thought I could read, put me in kindergarten. Couldn't read. He also knew that I held the book upside down and thought, this kid can resource like I can't believe. And I'm obviously not the only one that thinks the way that I think. And I think that's why these complex technical issues and languages and platforms, they make sense to us. It's because of the connections we make in the brain to survive our diagnosis, whatever those barriers are that you have to learn how to survive.
Yeah. And also technology allows for nonlinear thinking. I think that is key, because that's the difference that I saw when I became a developer, that I could do whatever I want, but I was just focused on that end result. And it gives you that freedom to write code however you want to. And over the years, I created this challenge for myself, is to write the shortest line of code to get the maximum results. And so it was done every single time. Just one line of code, finding it the right spot and solve it. And when you give freedom like that, it's just amazing. And that's why I think technology allows for that nonlinear path.
I agree with that. I am a nonlinear thinker. That is clear. When we go back and listen to this, like, oh my God, Candace, you talked about 15 different things in one sentence. I'm like, I know. I have a lot I want to say. But yeah, and I think that you're completely bang on with a non-linear thinking, and and when you can apply that, then you can get such amazing results from truly creative minds. Like I said, my father, he was an inventor, but if someone rang the doorbell, he ran up the stairs. He didn't want to talk to anybody. Okay. He couldn't handle it. So clearly there was some kind of undiagnosed neurodivergence happening then, but they didn't look into that. They had a limited idea of what that meant, but look what he was creating. But he wasn't super social and couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
Right.
We can be everything and everyone and all the best skills that the society considers best. Like, for instance, being social. For some reason, that is given a lot of weightage. If you're social, that's good. It's a point. It's a data point. That's it.
No, absolutely. But I'll tell you, and this is a little bit off topic, but I ended up going through 3 different interviews recently that were totally AI based, and they were awful. So I had to look at a screen. I had to look at a red light beeping at me. Also, I had to look at my face. And I don't know if you know, I'm like I can't not touch my hair. Like, if I'm staring at my face, I'm distracted, right? And this light is blinking, and it's this monotone voice, and I have to answer the questions. Mike, you look like that's just terrifying. It was an awful experience. And then at the end, you're like, do you like this video? I'm like, no, I don't like this video at all. I don't like this experience at all. Like, the funny part is it completely erased all the parts of my personality that bring together everything that I do. I can explain to you how I do things, right? But I couldn't, just erased me. And it brought me down to just the finite bits, the ones and zeros. And I felt completely binary. It took away, in fact, my quantum personality, the superposition between the 0 and the 1, like the infinity. What brings each person's uniqueness to a situation, to a position, right? So it took away the quantum and brought me back to the classical computing. Clearly, I got quantum on the brain, but I love it. It's so fascinating. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy talking to people about it and seeing how all of it can commingle with itself. Like, it's fantastic. Nonlinear thinking is allowed in quantum.
Fascinating. Quantum. I did a little bit of reading. I've always been intrigued by just that infinite solutions, ways of doing things, because that defines being open. Right? Just open to possibilities, because you can connect in rapid ways if you get on a different plane. I feel, and I'm getting a little spiritual here, but just different ways of different dimensions. And I feel somehow quantum is related to that.
Our bodies are quantum. Our brains are quantum. Our senses are quantum. You know, when you think about the complexity of taste, or you think about the complexity of what you hear, right? The different tonalities of what you're hearing, the spectrum. Think about what you see. right? The complexity, I think that's really all quantum now. Why in my body does my blood flow work better, and I don't get cholesterol while someone else who's almost exactly like me, they have problems where they're getting too much cholesterol and they need a different kind of enzyme diet. It's because your body is quantum. It works in different ways. And that's why, like, when we joke around, like, maybe this is too woo woo, but like, the idea that, oh, your ears are burning because like someone's talking about you and all of a sudden the phone rings. It's someone you expected to hear from. Don't tell me that you weren't sending something out, perhaps, or they weren't sending something out, perhaps, that in the quantum range it was picked up on. It just means that we can't all feel it now, but there's some people who can.
A lot of things about how we're made up of energy that is beyond any kind of human comprehension. And I think when it comes to the idea of quantum and whatever way you want to apply it, neurodivergent people, specifically autistic people, tend to be very existential in thoughts and feeling, and the finite is more difficult to comprehend than the infinite for a lot of us. And I think quantum is an extension of that, like the idea of that in this other realm that we can attach to, that we can attach science to, which, I mean, name an autistic person who isn't into science in some distant way. So it's another way for us to look at ourselves in a different realm.
It's accepting the uncertainty. And
Yes.
That's very hard for certain people to do. But if you can accept the uncertainty, then all of a sudden, wait a minute, you can take a step back and some of the ideas get to make sense. And that's hard. It's very hard for certain people. We all know people who can't deal with the uncertainty, can't deal with things change too quickly, like not knowing the 10 steps that are going to go down. That's very hard for quite a few neurodivergent people. But life is uncertain and everything is fairly uncertain. Taxes are there and you're going to die. But like pretty much like everything else is up for grabs, and how you embrace it, because it's up to you. It's up to you to choose. Are you going to embrace it? And I know it's hard. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is controlling you, but that's when you have to saddle up and you have to say, yeah, that's all very uncertain, but you know what? We got to make it. We got to put our stamp on it, right? Be part of it. Embrace the uncertainty.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, that there is a lot of freedom in chaos. There's no real right or wrong with chaos because it's all chaos. Yeah, uncertainty is hard and change is difficult for some people, but also coming to terms with the fact that you are perilously hurling through space on a giant rock can really shrink down the purview that you have of all those changes that you struggle with on a day-to-day basis. The uncertainty of what's going to happen next can be kind of part of the plan, that you don't know what the next thing is. And you can already know that fact ahead of time, at least. I hope that's at least something people can take away from the bigger ideas of quantum and the existential thoughts that sometimes we can get stuck in, and sometimes we can feel a little overwhelmed by, I think, when we're emerging into a world from our little kind of neurodivergent cave that we usually all have, going into the world that is fighting against us most of the time, especially right now. And the idea of neuro-inclusion seems distant, so we're having to advocate for ourselves more and more. Before we wrap up here, going off of that a little bit, what kind of hope for more neuro-inclusion would you like to see in the future?
Well, I definitely do see how that can come through technology. And like just the other day, I had read about, I think it was South Korea was testing this new like eye tracking method on babies to see if that meant that they had autism, right? Like they were trying to come up with diagnoses so young that you're able to make a real positive effect on their lives by already positioning things in a different way so that they can learn. So I think that technology is the key to diagnosis. I remember I hated how I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I want technology to make that better for people. I want more people to be diagnosed that deserve the diagnosis, because the diagnosis, in fact, crazy, I'm going to say it, it's empowering. It's absolutely empowering. And that's what I learned from my children was when one was diagnosed, they ran into school the next day and they said, I have ADHD and I talk a lot because I'm nervous. And by the end of the day, you had found there was like out of the 20 kids, there was another 6 that had known about their diagnoses and they all just came out with it. I was horrified when I heard that my child had done this, but then I was like, no, by them doing that, they were empowered. This is why this is happening. And it's a different way to think about it. It's just different the way. So they're doing some things that are right. Like that's getting better, but I'd like if that wasn't so, I'd like if it was handled again with less anxiety. And I think then I'd like to see more different ways of educating the children that have different types of neurodiversities. I just want us to go back to one quick thing. And I want to say, when you're uncertain, you're learning. Every moment of uncertainty is a moment where you're learning whether you like it or not. And everything you're learning is uncertain because you didn't know about it before you learned it. So when you try to think about it that way, like, I don't really want to take a left, but then you take the left, new picture, new perspective, and you were uncertain, but you learned and you did it. And that's why being uncertain is actually very empowering.
And you might fail by taking that left, but that's okay because now you have a data point, which you never did before.
Yeah. And I say everyone has the ability to fail. Everyone can fail. Truthfully, it's a lot easier to fail when you're a kid and you're younger. It's just a lot easier to get over it. It's just a fact, right? Because you're more malleable. And so that's why with your children, you allow them to do certain things. And then if they fail, that's okay. Because then they learn what they tried. They tried. It didn't work. Fine. We're going to pivot. We're going to do something else. Big deal. And then they learn that, oh my God, in life, whatever they face, if they think that something's insurmountable, they then understand how they remember how they got back up. That's where they remember. They remember how they got through failing. So I've always been like, no, let your kids fail young and they're better for it because the truth is the ones that fail as adults, they have a much harder time recovering from it.
And if they fail in a safe environment like home, so much better. And you learn through failing and you take those lessons, put it to practice and move on. Again,
being uncertain, failing, but then finding the best part of yourself and then embracing it, right? Like one of my kids turned to me, I had a moment this summer and my kid turned to me and they said, I know everything you're feeling because I can see it on your face. You're totally authentic. So I know when you say something that's really true and I get something out of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so mature. I'm going to cry. But like, I realized that I had baked that in, right? I had baked that in and I let it stay there until the time was when it could come out and realize that's what they had learned. So bake it into your children, the incredible love. You're right with the love. Bake it in. Bake in the uncertainty. And bake in the fact that it's okay to fail. And then when they succeed, it's just tremendous. It's unlike anything else. Like you saw other people and other kids succeed all the time, better grades. They got the better positions on the teams. They were in the more competitive teams. But then your kid turns around and you're like, wait a minute, they're doing really well because I baked it into them. And now look at them succeed.
And I just want to add one thing. Also bake in your words, Candace, quantum possibilities.
Yes, honestly, there's a lot out there for technology. Like there's a lot of things out there for kids who think with neurodiversity. There's plenty of amazing technology positions that they can investigate and try. I mean, you have someone who's really good linguistics. They can go into prompt engineering. Right? Rely on what makes the kid happy. And I think that truly what's out there with technology, they can really try to find their spot.
On that note, where can people find your work, your book, your podcast, everything?
Well, I am on Amazon. You can look up my Candace Gillhoolley and you're going to find my first book, which is called Last Duisburg. And then you're going to find Sentient Marketing. And you're also going to find The Quantum Curious. But most importantly, go to impactquantum.com. It has writing, it has podcast links, and you can keep in touch with us there.
Awesome. I'll include all those, of course, in the show notes at sparklaunchpodcast.com. I want to thank you for joining us here on the podcast. And on a short final note, the not knowing something is the invitation to become aware of something. So always remember that and carry that with you if there's anything to take away from this conversation. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you all next time.